All right, so you're thinking about becoming a Montessori school teacher. Love the ambition. We're doing a deep dive into RoleCatcher's resources today. Should be really useful for anyone looking to get into this kind of unique career path.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, not just like a basic overview. We're going to be looking at what makes this role so different from other types of teaching, the real skills that you need to succeed, and then we'll even get you prepped for going on those interviews.
Sounds good to me. One of the things that jumped out from RoleCatcher right away was this whole thing about guiding, not dictating when it comes to Montessori. You're not lecturing. It's more like you're trying to spark that natural curiosity that kids have, almost like you're a detective trying to figure out how they learn best.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that actually works in practice, especially in a multi-age classroom, which is very common in Montessori, often with kids up to 3 years apart. Imagine the learning dynamics in that kind of environment. The older kids are kind of mentoring the younger ones, and the younger ones are observing. It's this constant buzz of discovery.
Wow. Yeah, that's not an image I had in my head before. And ditch those textbooks. It's all about learning by doing. I think RoleCatcher calls it learning through discovery,
Exactly.
which makes a lot more sense when you think about it. Like, I bet you can remember those aha moments from your own childhood, and I'm guessing they didn't happen while you were just staring at a page.
Exactly, exactly. And that really gets to the heart of the Montessori philosophy, which is about raising independent learners. And when you think about it, that has such a huge long-term impact. We're talking confidence, problem solving, even just basic social skills. That all gets honed as they're learning and collaborating. So it's not just about academics, it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, it's like you're not just filling their heads with facts, but you're giving them the tools they need to succeed later in life.
Exactly.
But let's be real for a sec, because RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from talking about the pros and cons here. One of the big pros, high job satisfaction. But the pay tends to be a little lower than traditional teaching roles, so that's something to think about.
For sure. And you also get a lot of flexibility in how you teach, but with that comes classroom management. I mean, kids will be kids.
That's the truth. So it's really about finding the right fit, like what works for you, what works for your personality, what works for your goals. So yeah, think about that for a second. What really resonates with you in those pros and cons?
Yeah, what's non-negotiable for you in a career? And now you're probably wondering, well, this all sounds great, but how do I actually become a Montessori school teacher?
Right.
Well, don't worry, because RoleCatcher gives you a very clear roadmap.
Okay, good. So first stop on this roadmap, and they really hammer this home,
Yeah.
is hands-on experience. So think internships, volunteering, anything that gets you into a Montessori classroom to observe those master teachers in action.
Yeah, like any skill you want to get good at, you have to learn by doing. And RoleCatcher actually has this really cool tool to help you find those opportunities. It connects you with schools in your area that need interns or volunteers. Talk about cutting to the chase.
Okay, that is seriously handy. But it's not all about just checking boxes and getting that experience. RoleCatcher seems to be really big on the whole networking thing too, which, I'll be honest, can feel a little intimidating sometimes. Where do you even start with that?
Yeah, I totally get that. But try to think of it less about networking and more about just having passionate conversations with people who are as into Montessori as you are. So go to conferences, check out online forums, even just reaching out to teachers at your local Montessori school. Those connections are really, really valuable.
And it's not just about like a name drop or something. RoleCatcher actually lists like a bunch of organizations and associations right on their site that are really relevant. So it makes it super easy to find those like-minded people,
Yeah.
which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's all about tapping into that community, having those conversations, finding a mentor along the way. You'd be surprised how many people who are really experienced in this field are open to sharing their wisdom.
Okay, so we've got the passion, we're building experience, we're networking. How about official certifications? Are those like a make it or break it kind of thing?
That's where it gets kind of interesting. So a Montessori teacher certification, it's not always a legal requirement to work at one of these schools,
Okay.
but a lot of employers, they see it as a huge green flag on a resume
Of course.
because it shows that you're invested in the approach. You're not just there for a job.
Right, like you're serious about it.
Exactly.
Makes total sense. So which certification are we talking about here? I've heard of this thing, I think it's called AMI.
Yes, yes. The Association Montessori Internationale, AMI.
Oh.
They're like the gold standard in the Montessori world.
Hmm.
They're known for having very rigorous training programs. So if you're going to go that route, be prepared to do a deep dive. Lots of coursework, Classroom observations, they even have a final exam that will really test your knowledge. It's not a weekend workshop, it's a serious commitment.
Okay, sounds intense,
It is.
but rewarding.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Okay, so it's not for the faint of heart. But what if, like, AMI isn't really in the cards right now? Are there other options out there that people could look into?
Yeah, for sure. It's not AMI or bust. There are a lot of online programs, certifications from national Montessori organizations, and RoleCatcher actually breaks down all of the different options on their website. They even include links so you can learn more about each one. It's kind of like having your own personal guidance counselor, but online.
They really do seem to have thought of everything.
Yeah.
I'm liking this more and more. So let's say you've gotten some experience, dipped your toes into the networking world, maybe even got that certification all shined up.
Yeah.
What about the interview itself? I think that's where the real pressure is on it. And I know RoleCatcher kind of hinted at some really cool features that they offer on that front.
They do, and that's where their platform really shines, I think. You know how most interview prep is all just really generic advice? RoleCatcher said nope to that, and they get really laser focused on what it takes to succeed in a Montessori teaching interview.
Yep.
So we're talking about a massive database of practice questions, all tailored to this specific field.
Wait, hold on. Instead of just sitting there stressing out about what they're going to ask, I can actually practice with real questions that they've put together. Tell me more. This is big.
Yes. And it's not even about memorizing the answers. It's about understanding the Montessori mindset. So they have questions about the philosophy, how you manage a classroom, how you work with different age groups. It's like taking a peek inside the interviewer's brain.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, I already feel a little calmer, a little more prepared just knowing that's out there.
Yeah.
But wait, it gets even better. Right, they have something, it's AI, right, that they use for interview prep. Okay, now that is next level.
Yeah, this is where RoleCatcher goes from amazing to mind-blowing.
Okay.
If you decide to sign up for their RoleCatcher Copilot AI, it's like having a personal interview coach, but like powered by really, really smart tech.
Okay, so you're going to have to elaborate because this is sounding a little sci-fi, but in a career prep kind of way.
Yeah.
What does an AI interview coach even do?
Okay, so picture this. You record yourself answering some of those practice questions, kind of like a mock interview, but you're interviewing yourself.
Right.
And their AI analyzes everything. How clearly you're speaking, are you getting to the point, even things like your body language and tone of voice. It's like having this microscopic lens on all those subtle things that we might not even realize we're doing.
That's incredibly helpful. I know sometimes when I'm put on the spot, I get this like nervous laugh.
Yeah.
And I would love to have an AI point that out to me so I can work on it.
Exactly. And it's not just giving you generic feedback either, it's tailored to you. So it might say like, hey, you're really good at explaining complex things, or try to minimize those mums when you pause. It's specific to you, and it gives you something to actually work on.
Okay, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
It really sounds like they're trying to give people every advantage when they go into these interviews and not just like throw them to the wolves.
Exactly. They're setting you up for success. And I think having these AI-powered tools is huge, especially when you're up against other qualified people.
So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you totally crush that interview.
Okay.
Thanks to all of RoleCatcher's prep, you get the job.
Yeah.
Then what? Do they just drop you off at the classroom door and say, good luck?
That's where a lot of these career resources stop, but not RoleCatcher. They know that those first few months or even years in a new job can be tough. So they offer a lot of support and resources even after you're hired.
Oh, wow. Now that is above and beyond. It's like having a mentor on Call 247. What kind of support are we talking?
So their website has a ton of articles and guides about everything from dealing with difficult behavior in the classroom to putting together really engaging lesson plans to even just advice about how to communicate with parents. They've thought of pretty much everything.
It's like having a virtual teacher's lounge at your fingertips.
Yes.
I bet that is so helpful when you're feeling a little overwhelmed, which, let's be real, it's going to happen to everybody.
Of course, and you're not just stuck with whatever is on the website. They also have this awesome online community where you can connect with other Montessori teachers, share ideas, get advice on very specific challenges, or even collaborate on projects. So it's a really great way to plug into that support network.
I love that.
Yeah.
Knowing you're not alone in those tough moments makes all the difference. And it sounds like RoleCatcher is constantly updating his platform with new resources, so you're never really left behind.
Exactly. They're invested in your long-term success, not just getting you hired. And that's what makes them stand out. You know, it's not just a job board. It's like having a partner that's helping you develop your career every step of the way.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot. The heart of Montessori, what skills you need, how to get experience, networking, even how to use AI to crush it in the interview. And I think it's really clear that RoleCatcher is a really amazing resource for anyone who wants to become a Montessori teacher. But before we move on to some of the more specific details about the career path, I'm
Yeah.
curious. Before we move on to some of the more specific details about the career path, I'm curious, what surprised you most while digging into the Montessori world with RoleCatcher? Was there a detail that made you go, huh, I never thought of it that way before?
You know, it's funny you should ask that. What really struck me was how much RoleCatcher talked about observation. And
Okay.
not just like casual watching, but really deep, insightful observation as like a core skill for Montessori teachers.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about doing, it's about really seeing what's going on with each child.
Exactly. And they even highlighted this quote from Maria Montessori herself. She said, "Observation is the key to understanding a child's inner world." And it made me think about it in a different way. Like, a Montessori classroom with the mixed age groups and the focus on free choice, it's like this amazing laboratory for observing how kids learn naturally.
I love that. A laboratory of learning. So instead of force-feeding information, you're setting the stage, and then you're taking these like meticulous notes about what makes each kid tick.
Yeah, exactly. Noticing those aha moments, the things they struggle with, how they interact with the materials, with each other. And that's how you figure out how to guide them, not just based on some generic curriculum, but based on their individual journey.
It's like you're creating these mini biographies of each kid's learning process, which
Yeah.
is fascinating, but also like that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so observation, that's key. What else did they talk about? What else makes a Montessori teacher stand out skills-wise?
So they had this whole section on learning strategies, which honestly, at first, I was like, ooh, that sounds a little technical.
Yeah.
But when you actually dig into it, it's really cool. It's about having all these different teaching methods, like a toolkit, and knowing when to use which one based on what you're seeing in the classroom.
So you're not just doing the same thing every day with every kid. You're constantly adapting based on who's thriving and who needs you to kind of switch gears.
Yeah. It's about being responsive, intuitive, almost like an educational chameleon, blending into whatever learning environment is going to work best for those kids that day.
Yeah, because not every kid learns the same way. Some people are visual learners. Some people need to move around. Some people need to be working with other kids. It's about making sure that you're honoring each kid's individuality, not trying to force everyone in the same box.
Exactly. And a big part of that is something RoleCatcher calls coordination.
Okay, now when I hear coordination, I'm thinking like classrooms, not symphony orchestras,
Right. Well,
not teaching kids to conduct.
that would be a fun side project. But no,
Okay.
this is about managing all the... It can be chaotic sometimes, right? The beautiful chaos of a Montessori classroom. Kids of different ages, all doing different things at their own pace. You got to create a sense of flow. Organized freedom.
Ah, I see. So less about strict control and more about guiding that energy, making sure everyone feels challenged, but also supported, even when they're doing totally different things.
Yes. And it takes a lot of attention to detail, being able to anticipate what kids are going to need before it becomes a problem. And honestly, a lot of patience.
Patience, probably at the top of the list for any teacher, but especially in Montessori, where there's so much emphasis on letting kids kind of go and explore on their own.
For sure. And that actually leads to another skill that RoleCatcher highlighted, social perceptiveness.
Okay, what's that?
This one's all about reading between the lines. So not just seeing what kids are doing, but understanding the why.
Interesting. Like you're detective of emotions.
Yes.
You're trying to figure out like the unspoken things that are going on in the classroom, the dynamic.
Exactly. Because a meltdown over a spilled cup of water, it might not actually be about the water at all.
Right.
It could be that they're frustrated with something else, or that kid who's sitting quietly in the corner, they might not be disengaged. They could be totally absorbed in what they're doing.
Okay, that's a good reminder to like check our assumptions at the door. You really have to meet kids where they are emotionally and otherwise.
Absolutely. And all of this plays into how Montessori teachers actually assess how kids are doing, which is very different from traditional schools. RoleCatcher talks about how it's ongoing, it's individualized, not just based on standardized tests.
Which makes sense because you can't really capture those aha moments, that growth in independence or problem solving, with like a multiple choice test. So how does assessment work in this setting?
It's like having a conversation, a back and forth between the teacher and the student, and it's all guided by observation and documentation. They actually use this great phrase, capturing the nuances of a child's learning journey.
I love that. Like you're creating a learning portfolio for each child that's filled with anecdotes and observations and samples of their work. It's so much more personal than just a grade on a report card.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing and celebrating those little milestones because those are the things that add up to a lifelong love of learning.
Speaking of lifelong learning, RoleCatcher gets into the nitty-gritty of the actual knowledge areas that are super important for Montessori teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it was not what I expected.
Oh, really? What surprised you?
Well, I went in thinking, like, it's all about knowing that Montessori curriculum, like inside and out.
Right.
Which, don't get me wrong, it's important.
Of course, yeah.
But RoleCatcher highlighted this other thing, and I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's about really understanding child development.
Absolutely, because you're not just teaching a subject, you're guiding these little humans as they go through these huge developmental leaps, right?
Yeah.
Cognitively, socially, emotionally.
Exactly. It's like you can't just give a 5-year-old like a bunch of algebra problems and expect them to get it. You have to meet them where they are developmentally, figure out what they're ready for and how to like build those bridges so that they can actually learn it.
Exactly. Meet them where they are. I love that. And if you really know those developmental milestones, the common challenges, all those little quirks, that's so valuable for a Montessori teacher.
So it's almost like you need a degree in tiny human development on top of knowing how to like actually do Montessori.
It's all connected, really. And speaking of connected, another thing RoleCatcher talked about was how important aesthetics are in a Montessori classroom. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes. They talk about creating a prepared environment, right? And it's not just about making it look nice. It's deeper than that.
Exactly. It's a whole philosophy. Everything matters. The colors they use, where the furniture goes, how the materials are organized. Everything has a purpose.
Yeah. It's about creating a sense of calm and order, but also inviting kids to come and explore. Like, hey, touch me, check me out, figure me out, but not overwhelming. It's really amazing how much thought goes into that.
Right. It's like intentional design, but for kids.
Totally.
And the materials themselves are really cool, too. RoleCatcher talks about how they're not just there to be fun. They're carefully chosen because they teach specific things.
So we're not talking about the latest iPad or whatever. It's more about those beautiful, handcrafted materials that really draw you in.
Exactly. And a lot of them are what they call self-correcting, which I thought was fascinating. So, like, a kid can do a puzzle or some kind of sorting activity, and they can tell if they got it right or wrong without an adult having to tell them.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. Talk about building independence.
Yeah. So each material is like, it has this built-in feedback loop. So kids are constantly learning and improving just by trying things out.
Exactly. Which takes us back to observation. The teacher's job is to create that prepared environment, choose the right materials, and then take a step back. Observe. See where those aha moments are happening and where a little guidance might be needed.
So we've talked about a lot of great stuff, the heart of Montessori, the skills, all the knowledge. But RoleCatcher keeps it real and talks about the challenges too, because there are going to be some tough days, right?
Oh, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in the beauty of the Montessori philosophy. But like any teaching job, it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows.
So what are some of the real-world challenges people should be prepared for if they want to be a Montessori teacher, even if they have the passion for it and all the skills?
Well, the one that came up again and again, and this is something a lot of teachers struggle with, is dealing with challenging behavior.
Right, because kids are still learning how to, like, manage their emotions and navigate social situations. So sometimes those meltdowns are going to happen, no matter how perfect your classroom is.
Exactly. And because Montessori gives kids a lot of freedom to choose their activities and move around the classroom, you really need a special set of skills to help them manage their behavior in a way that respects their independence, but also keeps everyone safe and productive.
Right. It's a delicate balance. You can't be like super strict and lay down the law, but you can't just let it be total chaos. You have to find that sweet spot, which probably takes some time.
Absolutely. And that's where those specific techniques that RoleCatcher talked about, things like positive discipline, are really, really valuable.
It's all about giving them those skills early on, teaching them to manage their own behavior, work through conflicts, and just be a good member of the classroom community. Which, honestly, those are useful skills for everyone, not just little kids.
Exactly. So those challenging moments, they can actually be opportunities for learning and growth for the kids and the teacher. And I think that's what makes Montessori so special. It's not just about teaching kids facts, it's about looking at the whole picture.
I love that. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Montessori education, What's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
If even one tiny thing that we talked about sparked your curiosity, if something just kind of clicked with you, that's amazing. Because it could mean that you have that special something that makes a great Montessori teacher.
It's like that saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But it's even more than that, right? It's like a whole philosophy, a way of life.
That's a great way to put it. And if you are interested in learning more, RoleCatcher is an amazing resource. Seriously, they've thought of everything. They'll help you figure out if this is the right path for you, navigate the whole job market, and they'll even be there for you once you're in the classroom.
They're like your own personal cheering section,
Yes,
but with tons of great information and AI to back it up.
exactly. So dive in, explore those resources, but most importantly, trust your gut. If this feels right to you, if you've ever felt that pull towards guiding young minds, then maybe a career as a Montessori teacher is calling your name.
I love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. And for everyone listening out there, whether you're just starting to think about a career in education or you're a seasoned pro looking for something new, remember, never stop learning, never stop growing, and never underestimate the power of a prepared environment. For you and for the kids, you might be inspiring one day.
Yes, 1,000 times yes.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive.
Woo!
We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration.
Until then, stay curious.